Hello and welcome everyone to the Difference Makers Summit. This is week 6 and we're going to take a journey into mindfulness today. That's a journey where you're going to learn how to live fully in the present. And to do that, I'm very excited to have with us a very special gift who's going to reveal a 7-step system so you can achieve success and maximize your potential. I'm Lynn Sanders, the story marketing expert and your host for the Difference Makers Summit, where our mission is to inspire, empower, and transform lives by learning from business leaders who will help you tap into your highest potential so you can achieve success. I'm really excited about our program today. As always, I'd like to extend a big thank you to everyone listening, both live and on the replay. It really means a lot to me to have you here. And I know I invited some people who have never before been on a hangout, so I really want to thank you for making the extra time and effort just to come into this program. To make the most of your experience, I'm going to invite you all to write in your name and your location in the comment stream. And then after that, I want you to make comments and engage with us. That's the way to really maximize your learning experience, by doing something, by getting active. And you're having the potential today to tap into the expertise of an international expert on mindfulness. So please get involved with us. And to help you get more benefits from the program, in every summit we are offering bonus gifts. That's right, you heard it. Free bonus gifts. All you need to do is to write your name and email in a registration link that we will show you on this page, and then you will be able to get all the bonuses. And it's also a chance for me to keep in touch with you and notify you of our different events and other programs that we're going to have in the future. So first now, I want to acknowledge my dear friend and esteemed wingman, who is the host of the popular Saturday morning Marketing Smarties show and founder and president of R&D Hotline. If you have a question, you've got to ask the hotline. Please, let's welcome Roland Takaoka from California. Roland, how are you doing today?
Thank you, Lynn. I'm doing wonderfully. I'm not going to take up any time describing what's going on here because I'm really anxious to see what Steve has to say. So let me bow out and we can get on with the show.
Okay, very good. Roland, you're always good at keeping good track of time. So let me give you all a little preview about Dr. Steve Taubman, our guest. I'm really excited to have him here. Steve is an international speaker, trainer, and best-selling author, #1 best-selling author on Amazon for the book Unhypnosis, How to Wake Up, Start Over, and Create the Life You Were Meant to Live. Isn't that a powerful title? In addition to all that, he is an unhypnosis expert, which he'll explain to you. He's a magician, and he also is a creator of several programs, one of which I took, which I love. It was called Procrastination Annihilation, and he also created a CD program called Unhypnosis for Direct Sellers, which was named one of the top 25 must-have products for 2011 by Direct Selling Live. Dr. Steve has been interviewed on many radio and TV stations. He speaks on stages across the world, blending his teachings with comedy and magic to provide engaging, fun, and thought-provoking presentations about mastering the subconscious world. And that's what we're all about, all of us difference makers, understanding our thoughts. So I'm going to have a quick question here from one of our viewers before I bring Steve on. Roland wanted me to acknowledge Jeremy Murphy. Yay, Jeremy. Roland, would you read aloud what Jeremy has to say for us before I bring on Steve?
It's not a question, actually. He's just saying, howdy from Lincoln, Nebraska. Love this mindfulness topic. One of my favorites.
Thank you. All right, so without further ado, let us all welcome Dr. Steve Taubman. Yay, Steve.
Hey, everyone. How you doing? Lynn, what a pleasure being here. I'm glad I could find some time to meet with you and share. And, we've got a lot to cover in a brief time, so I think we should jump right on in. What do you think?
Definitely. And would you let everyone know where you are hanging out from, Steve, so you can see that we have a representation around the country today?
I'm in beautiful, sunny, and quite wintry Burlington, Vermont.
Wow. Well, we'll all have to...
Yeah, it was 40 degrees, but with the wind chill, it was 34.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I'm here in Chicago, Roland's in California, you're in Vermont, and we have visitors from all over listening. So let's start out with your story, because I think that really is a great representation of mindfulness. And I'd like you also to give our audience your understanding of what is mindfulness and what is your story of how you became a mindfulness expert.
Okay, well, let's start with my story. You know, as you probably know, if you've been following me at all, I have kind of an eclectic background. I graduated in 1982 from New York Chiropractic College as valedictorian of my class, and moved to Vermont to start a ultimately very successful sports medicine practice that I ran for 14 years. During the same time, I was the president of the Vermont Chiropractic Association and helped to spearhead changes in the profession that brought us into greater parity with the medical profession, including things like providing for chiropractors and hospital privileges, and changing laws and relationships in a very positive way. And over the course of time that I was a chiropractor, I was operating based on a principle. This is a basic principle of chiropractic, which says that when it comes to getting healthy, nature needs no help, it just needs no interference. So chiropractors are very big on trying to find non-invasive ways of helping people get healthy by removing interference to the manifestation of health. So what that means is that if you're unhealthy, it's probably not because you have an antibiotic shortage. It's probably something about the way your body is regulating itself that's impacting your overall well-being. And in chiropractic, what we try to do is find ways of promoting wellness by improving the communication between the brain and the body. And the way we do that is by removing interference, things that block the pathway of information going from the brain to the body. So that was a big part of the philosophy underlying the work that I did, and with that was able to help an enormous number of people. Several years went by, had a successful practice. I got to a point where I felt like it was no longer in my truth, and I wanted to do something different. And over the course of some of those years, as you know, Lynn, I started doing magic as a hobby, and found myself kind of moonlighting at corporate events, doing magic shows and close-up magic, and started really playing with the idea of perception. It became really interesting to me. So in 1996, I sold my chiropractic practice, left the country for a few months, and went to Guatemala and El Salvador and Honduras and studied Spanish, had some very interesting kind of life changes, and along the way became really fascinated by the subconscious mind and by the concept of mindfulness. So now this goes back 20 years ago when I really started exploring things like mindfulness meditation, started looking at some of the neurology of mindfulness, and at the same time started figuring out what I wanted my life to look like. So when I came back to the U.S., I ended up becoming a stage hypnotist and performing really interesting shows all over the United States and the Caribbean. I was the official hypnotist for Spring Break. Dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, I can imagine. That must have really been interesting.
And just performed at a lot of high-end corporate events, and both magic and hypnosis. And that became my sort of second profession. All the time that I was doing that, I was developing a greater and greater appreciation of this concept of mindfulness, and of course through hypnosis and understanding of the subconscious mind. And so what I did was I started kind of asking myself some interesting questions about mental health, about peak performance, about what is it that makes us fulfilled in our lives, how do we express ourselves more fully, how do we have the life we're meant to live. And what I came up with was a frame. And the frame was that, gosh, you know, all the time that I was a chiropractor, I was interested in removing physical interference that was preventing information from getting from the brain to the body. That interference was in the form of what we call subluxations. Subluxation is a misaligned bone in the spine that could be pinching a nerve and interrupting the flow of information.
Right.
Well, I thought, isn't that interesting? I've been doing hypnosis for a while now, and I've begun to notice that we don't just have physical subluxations, we have mental subluxations. we have interference to the flow, the natural flow of the very best of ourselves. So in chiropractic, what we're doing is removing the physical interference to the manifestation of health. What I started noticing was that we also have mental interference to the manifestation of well-being, wonder, fascination, appreciation, joy, and success. And it's very much the same thing. They're analogous. So what are those mental subluxations? What are the things that are blocking our ability to express ourselves fully? And the way we experience them are things like fear, sabotage, self-sabotage, negative self-talk, procrastination. And often we try to overpower those things in order to achieve some kind of success. But what I started to discover in the work I started to do was that without a lot of effort, if you could speak directly to the subconscious mind and help remove some of those limiting beliefs, some of those blockages, then there would be a flow. Then people would start to live their lives from a state of wonder. They would start to be more motivated. They would start to be more expressive. And you'd start to see some of the inner child coming out. People would start being a little bit more lively, and that made them more able to build rapport and more able to attract others to what they're interested in. So it started being a message that was very useful to salespeople or to creative people, entrepreneurs, network marketers. And that's kind of what I've evolved into. So now, as you know, I've been producing products and programs that are designed primarily to speak to the subconscious mind so that we can remove those barriers, those points of interference that are getting in the way of our success. And the result of that is pretty magical, because if you remove interference, then all of that innate, inherent greatness is right there waiting to be expressed. Great love in life, the thing that really gives me joy is to create programs that influence not adding to the system, but removing from the system, removing the interference, letting us express ourselves more fully.
So that's beautiful. So what you're saying is you're really, as you said, removing the interference. You're really allowing people to tap into their greatness. I would say sense that. In fact, just I think it was either this morning or last night, I was watching one of the video clips of your Unhypnosis programs. Anyone can go to YouTube, type in Steve Taubman, and it was just so wonderful because there was a woman, I think she was someone who was normally shy at a network marketing event, and she was just going on and on with such enthusiasm about being achieving your highest potential. And
right.
It's amazing to think that's all because of your hypnosis programs or mindfulness programs that got her to tap into her core, her inner strength. I see that we have a question or a comment. I'll take a look from Lynn, and I'm going to ask you, Roland, if you would mind reading it aloud for me. Lynn Hawkins has a comment.
Lynn Hawkins says, I love the thought that nature needs no help. It needs no interference. We do all have within us that we do have all within us that can promote health and wellness. So she's right in line with what you're saying, and I'd like to reinforce that myself.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn.
In fact, what do you think makes a mindfulness? Jeremy Murphy, who was listening here, had been on our blab before we started the program, and he raised a good question. What do you think makes someone a mindfulness expert? I thought that was a great question to ask.
Well, it's a really interesting question because if you when push comes to shove, there really is no expert. But I guess what I would say is that it's been something that I've made a priority in my life, and I think I've got the ability to communicate it in a way that people hear it. This is a process, and it's a process that never ends. Where when we're talking about our minds and we're talking about our knowledge base, you could always gain more knowledge, and but you might eventually become an expert because you've gained a certain amount of knowledge. With mindfulness, it's really, again, it's a process of emptying or a process of changing your perspective. And Rinpoche, who was a great meditation teacher, once compared mindfulness to fresh baked bread.
Mm.
So he said that yesterday's bread is no good. It's got to be today's bread. every day you wake up and you start over again. Every day you wake up and you recreate the experience of mindfulness. Because mindfulness is, another way of saying it, is beginner's mind.
The what is that?
Beginner's mind, having the mind of a beginner. Having a new mind, an open mind, the ability to be so present in this moment that you're not ruining it, you're not overriding it with preconceived notions. You're not overriding it with judgments. You're not overriding it with a sense of entitlement. You're open. You're a child, and you've got that sense of curiosity and wonder and awe that comes from systematically releasing your sense of self, who I think I am, what I think is true and what I think isn't true. So that's why I say there's no mindfulness expert, because it's a constant process. You're always a beginner, and it's always a choice you get to make about whether or not to release some of your sense of certainty. I think we need to let go of our certainty if we want to live a full life.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so that's where I come from. So my so-called expertise is because, well, first of all, I started out as a neurotic Long Island kid who was, had depression and anxiety and a lot of dysfunctional stuff going on in the family, and I suffered a lot. I had a lot of pain, emotional pain. And what mindfulness began to do for me when I started to embrace it was not necessarily to make all the pain just instantly go away, but instead to change my relationship to it. So that now, if I feel anxiety or depression, or if I hear myself saying something negative about myself, I don't experience that anymore, or very seldom, as if it's true. I experience it almost as if it's a possessing entity.
Wow.
Whereas me, the real essence of who I am, is bigger than all of that. Now that may seem very esoteric or new agey, but what it means is that if I feel fear, it's not going to stop me. If I feel depression, it's not going to stop me. Because I could keep my eye on my intention. I could keep my eye on my goals, and I could keep moving forward. And as those things arise, I could parry. I could keep moving forward. So what I find when I teach this material is it's not even so much teaching. I'm teaching a technology, but if you don't do anything about it, it's of no use at all. You've got to hear it, learn it in your head, and then you've got to practice it. And the practice is, of course, the practice of re-identifying yourself, getting rid of the sense of yourself as...
Uh-oh, I don't hear you. I think we got frozen. Roland? Oh, there you are, Steve. Can you repeat what you just said? I think you got frozen. I didn't hear that last part. Whatever that was ending. I don't know. Roland, did you hear that?
Okay, well, I'll do my best. I mean, I never...
At the very end, you were just finishing your sentence, and all of a sudden it froze.
Okay, well, the gist of what I was saying is that we need to begin to recognize that we're far more limitless, far more capable than we believe, and the beliefs that stop us are the thing that needs to be changed.
Great. Well, that leads us to our next question. I've promoted on this page that you're going to reveal 7 steps to help people be able to be successful and remove those mental barriers. And so I wanted to go into that. I see there's just a comment that Roland wanted to share before we go into that, so we'll hold that thought for just a second. Chiwa Slater. Hi, Chiwa. Roland, would you read this aloud for me so I can have you?
Chiwa says, I love the notion of mental subluxations. Yes, and sometimes, wow, this is all jumping around, sorry.
Sometimes we need a mindfulness.
We need a mindfulness adjustment.
Great. Like a tune-up, just like the chiropractor adjustment. So,
Well,
Steve, how do we... Yeah, I love that you went from doing physical adjustments to mental adjustments. And actually, as you know, we all know, it's all the same. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, it's all intertwined. So I'm going to just hold off for one moment. I'd like to, well, I know you want to share another comment. Ron Harvey, the beginner's mind is one that just absorbs the joy of life. Oh, that is beautiful. Thank you, Ron. So let's move on now to what is the way we can remove those mental barriers, Steve. Can you give us your 7 steps?
Sure. Let me build up to that if you don't mind. I want to say a couple of things to kind of put this in context.
Thank you.
I want to say that it's timely that we're meeting now. That this is the time that we're all coming together. I've discovered or sort of noticed that there are 3 market trends, sort of trends in our world that have kind of conspired to make this kind of information really important to us. You know, the first thing is that I don't know if you've noticed this, but the economy and the way that the workforce has been evolving has sort of forced us to become entrepreneurial.
Yes.
That you kind of have to be an entrepreneur nowadays, right? Now, second, because of that, there's a sense of competitiveness that's never been there before, and that sense of competitiveness, it's becoming clear that skill is not the distinguishing factor to what makes somebody more successful than somebody else. It's obviously about mindset, because that's where we really reflect our greatness, right?
True.
And the third is that there is now technology that exists that allows us to change our mindset remotely. And that's what we're going to be talking about, because it used to be if I wanted to work with somebody and give them a so-called mental adjustment, they'd have to come into my office, they'd have to sit down with me face to face, and I'd have to go through a process with them, and we sort of discover together where their blocks are. And then I'd have to do some kind of a hypnotic process to help them to release the that sense of guardedness so that we could get in deeper to the subconscious. And then I would begin helping them to release the negative barriers and help implant some positive messages that that we've co-created, the ones that really would help them be who they wanted to be. But it was an expensive process, and it was a time-consuming process, and it meant people had to come in. So now we have the technology to do what we're doing right now, which is to teach remotely.
Right.
And so we've been able to create programs that allow people to transform without having to spend the time and the money that was involved in the past. And so what you and I have both begun to do is to create products that will give information. But what I've tried to do is to also find ways of using remote teaching or remote touching of people to speak to the subconscious as well. So we could even do the hypnotic part, the mindfulness part, remotely.
Great.
So that's where the material that we're about to talk about comes from. We actually have, as you know, a number of programs. The one that what we're about to talk about comes from is Procrastination Annihilation. I see one of.
I love that program.
Fascinating program because again, it's designed not only to give you head stuff, but also to reprogram your subconscious mind so you'll actually take action. And in the context of that program, there are 2 primary lessons. We're going to talk about one of them right now. The 2 primary lessons, number 1, is about what are the subconscious drivers to our procrastinating in the first place. What are those mental blocks that stop us at the subconscious level? So we're not even aware that they're acting on us. If I were to ask you or most other people on the street what makes you procrastinate, most people are going to say, I'm just lazy. What we now know is that laziness has nothing to do with procrastination. It's actually almost never the reason why people procrastinate.
Interesting.
So there are actually 8 subconscious drivers of procrastination. If we have a few moments, I'll list them out for you. But we're not going to have time to go into detail about those 8. But when you start getting traction on them and being able to come out of your unconscious effect, come out of the way those things are acting on you and become more mindful so you can say, oh, this is what's happening. I'm in this state, or I'm in this state, or this subconscious driver is affecting me. Those 8, what I call flavors of procrastination, each have their own solution. So that's one part of this program. The other part is what I call the 7 steps for getting things done. How do we take a pragmatic approach to having a life unfold that really reflects who we want to be? And I think it requires not only a better sort of subconscious mind, but also some pragmatic strategies. So that's what the 7 steps are, and that's what I think we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. Well, we're all waiting to hear that because I think everyone listening here obviously is taking the time out because they want to grow themselves and they want to make a bigger difference. So you're talking to the right tribe.
Okay.
Yeah. So why don't you start by letting us know what would be like the first item on your list to getting.
Okay. So the first step to getting, now when I talk about getting things done, I'm talking about taking any idea, anything that pops into your mind, and moving it all the way through until it actually comes to fruition.
Okay.
How do you take, that random thought and end up making it into something of value?
Right.
I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of great ideas that never went anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I've even had ideas that were $1,000,000 ideas that eventually somebody else had and made $1 million on it.
Right. Yeah, I've had
It's a very frustrating experience. So if we want to live the life of our dreams, one of the things, and the very first thing we need to do, is to honor the wealth of information that is bubbling up in our subconscious mind by capturing it. So I call that first step capture. This is where we capture our ideas. And if you were to do nothing else after this call but simply have a strategy for capturing your ideas as you have them, your life would be immeasurably improved. You already start to see major changes happening because you would have access to the brilliance that's kind of bubbling up in the background that you just never really give a lot of credence to. So how do you do that? Well, there's high tech and there's low tech. You could carry a little notebook with you, right? Carry a little piece of paper and a pen. And every time you have an idea, you just take out that little notebook and you write the idea down. You don't have to write it in its entirety. You simply have to jot a note that will remind you of the idea. The way I do it.
And remember where you put that little note.
Well, that's the second step. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So I use, what do you call that thing? This one right here.
Is it the audio?
Yeah, the audio. It says voice memos. I've got, like right now as we speak, I've got 11 voice memos that I made yesterday.
That's great.
Some of them might be really stupid, by the way. I don't want to, give the
We're not
impression.
judging, Steve. We're not judging, right?
Every idea is not a pearl, but more of them than you might imagine, and you're in no position to judge when you first have the idea. Again, you have to respect and honor the subconscious brilliance that's bubbling up. So these are your brain droppings. These are the things you've got to capture. So you capture them either high tech or low tech, but you make sure you capture them. That's your very first step, which will already begin kind of a cascade of changes in your life because you're already honoring the intention to farm your own brilliance.
I want to just pause right there. That's really important because I think what you're saying, and I think we're all growing. Like I'm a different person than I was when I took your Procrastination Annihilation course, which was years ago, and I'm ready to actually take it again. I think what you're saying, though, is you're honoring your higher self by taking notes that come to you. And those notes, I know when I do writing sometimes, I feel like I'm channeling the words through a higher source to put those words down on paper. And I think that what you're saying is we're honoring our higher selves by acknowledging to the universe that this is important enough that I'm going to write it down or speak it into a machine. It's really great message.
Yeah, I think it's two things that probably up to this point have prevented us from doing this. One is that we're not giving ourselves as much credit as we deserve for the fact that we are creative, brilliant beings. Yes. And that's what you're talking about, and I think it's so important to begin to honor it because it's like what you acknowledge grows. So you start to acknowledge your brilliance begins to grow, your ideas begin to come more fast and furious. The second probably major impediment is probably a certain amount of misguided pride that we think we're going to remember it.
Exactly.
We never do, that's the problem is that I've had all these fantastic ideas and by the time I get upstairs, they're gone. So not only do you want to capture your ideas through some methodology, You want to make sure that whatever it is that you're using to capture those ideas is always with you, because you don't know where they're going to come about. For me, a lot of my ideas come when I'm walking my dog. Gotta have it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's the first step. The second step I call idea collection.
Idea collection.
You know, what do I do with all 11 of these things on my phone? Well, what I do is I listen to them and I write them on a piece of paper. Sometimes I do it on the computer. I go back and forth, but they all go in one place. So the idea is that I'm not going to actually share my screen just to show you this, but I do have a folder on my desktop that says random ideas.
Really? Random ideas folder. That's great.
So whenever I come home with these 11 ideas, I type them into, or I write them down, whatever, but they go into my random ideas, and which I look at daily, maybe every other day. See, but it's something that you've got all these cool ideas there that, you know, they all go off in different directions. You know, one of the ideas might be something that you can do right now. Call mom. You know, it's just something you do. So you may not even need to ever get from capture to collection. You just do it. But some ideas you're going to have to do something with. You're going to have to probably kind of work them. You may have they become a goal that needs a certain set of steps to accomplish. So that's why if you don't have one place to throw all that stuff, then you have notes all over the place.
You're right.
You know, and then or they just stay on the phone and you never even listen to it. So just have that one place all have anything to do with each other. You know, I've got an idea here about, gosh, let's take a look. I'm going to see what I've got here.
What is in the random ideas?
What's in the random idea folder for today? Where's random ideas?
I hope everyone's writing notes right now, and maybe you'd like to share some of the random ideas or thoughts you have about right now, about what's happening on the screen. Feel free.
Okay, here's on my random idea list. One thing is an idea that I had for a blog, and all I wrote were these words. I wrote "just like now." And the idea was something like this. It's not a fully formed idea, but the thought was we have much more greatness than we realize, and a lot of times we'll say someday, you know, someday I'll be a great singer, or something like that. And then I say to myself, just like now. So I'm basically taking my future thing and I'm bringing it into the present.
Oh, great.
So it's a way of like taking every future idea and making it sound like it lives in the present moment. And I've been playing with it.
Oh, I like that. Roland, would you like to share? Are there any comments here that you would let us hear what's happening out in the comment stream?
Before you do the comments, I just wanted to kind of
go ahead, Steve.
The randomness of this. On the same piece of paper, I've got something about doing a house swap in San Miguel in Mexico, doing a team building day, learning another language, remembering a story about when my Triumph GT6 caught on fire. And I mean, you can see it's completely random. Every one of these is just something that I thought of, wrote it down, put on this list for later use. So that's the point I wanted to make with that.
That's good, and you never know when those points will come in handy.
Right.
So, Ron, to turn back to you, do you have anything to share from our audience about what they're thinking, either randomly or consciously, subconsciously, about the...
A lot of deliberate comments coming through. Shiwa Slater keeps a notepad next to her when she meditates because the great ideas come through then. If she doesn't write them down, they get lost. So she was making mention of that. She writes them down, can let it go, and then she gets back to her meditation.
I love that. That's great.
That was good.
And also, that's a fascinating subject. We may want to play with that a little bit. I've got some comments about that, but go on.
Okay. And then V. Lynn says, that's a good question, Steve. What is your thinking about how the heart and love flow into this daily process and practice? So she would like you to address that. And Virginia Parsons says she loves the term farm out your own brilliance.
That is a great one.
So the one last one to catch up. Marie Stubbs says, I love the voice computer capture idea. Sometimes I can't even remember what my notes meant.
Oh, I love that, Marie.
That's like that Jerry Seinfeld episode when he woke up in the middle of the night and wrote some notes about a great joke and he couldn't figure out what it was.
That's true.
About heart and love, this is really what we're talking about. You know, I don't always language it that way because we're talking to entrepreneurs and not everybody speaks that language. But quite frankly, that flow, that ability to like live in the present moment and manifest your dreams and have direct connections with people, that's love, that's heart, that's that energy that's flowing above, down, inside out, above, down, inside out. And if this is a constant flow, if we're constantly in this flow, and that flow represents love and it represents abundance and it represents prosperity, then what is blocking it? What's in the way of your love? What's in the way of your prosperity? What's in the way of your expressing yourself in relationships in an empowering way? And it's always something in the way, right? So the something in the way is these barriers, and if you get in the habit of honoring your, that greatness as it comes, then you're starting to re-identify yourself. You're starting to see yourself as a being of love, as a being from the heart.
Beautiful. Transform.
And because this stuff, see, we could philosophize all day long about this. It's wonderful stuff. The other piece of that, I think, is we sometimes our ideas, the ones that we don't express, the ones that we don't write down, they can become little anchors on us, because you know how you have that little feeling of incompletion. There's something I'm trying to remember, but I can't remember what it is. And then when you feel that, when you think those thoughts, it actually that becomes a barrier unto itself. Whereas if you write it down, you get it out, you express it, well, now it's not hanging there. So your soul is lighter.
That is so true. It's really true. So, I mean, I can think about it, and also I think when you get stuck, it can end up resulting in physical ailments when something gets weighted so heavily down in our mental state. That has happened to me personally.
As you said before, it's body-mind connection. They both are.
So let's move on now to number 3. What's your third step in your system of achieving more?
Okay, so once you've got a collection of ideas, and you're looking at that list from time to time, you're going to come across something on your list that you think, well, I want to go somewhere with this. I want to explore this a little further. The third step I call idea cultivation. How do you cultivate an idea? If an idea is like a seed, and you were smart enough to take that seed and you were smart enough to put it in the ground by collecting the ideas, now you've got to cultivate that idea. Now you've got to work it. And sometimes we skip this step to our detriment. We all have a conscious and a subconscious mind. We all have a right and a left brain. We all have a very creative side, and we have a very pragmatic, orderly side. Some of us have more of one than the other, but we all have both.
Exactly.
Cultivation of an idea is really the domain of the creative part of your brain. So you have an idea. It's an interesting idea. It's interesting enough that you wrote it down. It's interesting enough that you put it on your list. And as you read your list, you found that idea and you said, geez, that's kind of interesting. What do I want to do with this idea? Is it a blog post? Is it a book? Is it a new product? Is it a new way I want to talk to my spouse? What is this thing? Well, the best thing you could do with that idea is put it on a piece of paper, unlined paper, get some colored pencils, go to town. Let your right brain, your inner child, go to work on this idea. So you're not trying to put it in any kind of order. You're not trying to come up with a strategy for how to implement the idea. All you're doing is playing. So for me, when I wrote my book on hypnosis, I came up with the 5 layers of consciousness. It was a model that I created to explain how our minds work and how they eventually influence everything about our lives. So if I want to explain these 5 levels of consciousness, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down 5 levels of consciousness. What are they called? And I might, make a circle over here and put it, the name of the first level in color, and the second one in a different color, and I've got this piece of paper that's like a splash of creative ideas. And then I think, okay, when I talk about that one, I'm going to want to make sure that I include this story or that example or that piece of research. So I'll have little circles and triangles and arrows, and it just becomes this big splash of ideas and ideas that are affecting other ideas, kind of like a mind map, but even more kind of unfocused. And that's my way. Now, these are all just my way of speaking to a particular thing. I've got friends who teach mind mapping, which is incredible. And mind mapping sort of does that plus the next step in the same step. But I've got it broken into 2 steps.
Okay.
Right?
I like that very much.
So,
it reminds me of finger painting, just going wild, letting your creative mind just be open.
It's so important because a big part of, and again, it's honoring your creativity. It's honoring the greatness. It's honoring your subconscious. So many things will come to light when you take the time to do that. And it doesn't necessarily have to take a lot of time. You may do that and put it aside and pick it up again the next night. We all have creative times of our day, times that we feel more like doing it. Some of us do. I'm a middle of the night creative guy.
Okay.
So for me, I'll take out that piece of paper in the middle of the night and I'll just play.
Right.
And you'll know when you've farmed that idea, when you've cultivated that idea thoroughly enough that you're ready for the next step.
And that is?
Give up. No, just kidding.
Uh-oh. We look at Give up. Okay.
The next step is what I call idea structuring. So, as I said, we have a right brain and a left brain. We have the inner child and we have the inner adult.
Okay.
We've just let our inner child out on this idea. We've gotten creative. We've been playful. We've had a great time with it. Well, now we've got to bring this mishmash of ideas to our inner adult. We've got to go to our left brain and we've got to say, okay, these are wonderful ideas, and I've got lots of ideas that have grown on the original idea. Now what do I do? How do I put this in some kind of order? How do I create structure so that I can begin to do something with it? So structuring an idea means using tools like outlines or lists.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to take all these ideas and figure out, well, which one is chapter 1 and which one is chapter 2? And, where is this going to all fall into place? So you just begin to create the structure, the framework that's going to ultimately lead to the fully formed idea. So we've captured the idea, we've collected the idea, we've cultivated the idea, and now we're beginning to create some kind of structure. So we can look at it and we could say, all right, I see that now I've got the idea of a book, and I see that the first chapter is about the essence of who we are. The second chapter is about values and beliefs. The third chapter is about goals. The fourth chapter is about manifesting your truth. And the fifth chapter is about how to communicate with other people about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've got that. Now that doesn't mean I'm done, but it means I've at least got a plan of attack.
Right. You fleshed out all the elements.
Yeah.
So then what comes after step number 4? After idea structuring, I imagine you would fill out those ideas more, or what comes with
kind of. I call this part idea testing. What happens is we all have wonderful ideas that we may or may not know how to implement, or we have some resistance to implementing. I had an example recently. Oh, I have an example right now. In fact, if anybody is on this call who can help me with this, you're welcome to get in touch with me.
That sounds good.
One of the things that I'm not particularly adept at is creating a marketing plan. Right? I've got all these products and services, and I speak and I entertain, and I do a lot of really fun stuff, but it's not like I wake up every morning and I know, okay, today I'm going to contact this market segment and talk to them about this, and tomorrow I'm going to do that. So my marketing plan is a mess. It's my one area of haphazardness. So when I want to leap to a higher level, And I know that somewhere on my structured list of things to do, maybe in my outline, is the idea, develop a marketing plan. And I look at my list and I see develop a marketing plan. Do you think that I wake up on Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock and I spend an hour and I've got a marketing plan?
Probably not, if you don't know what to do, right?
Because I have no idea how to do it. So every idea on my list is at some level of possibility. Develop a marketing plan belongs on that list, but it's certainly not something that I can just do in its entirety. It's something that's going to have to be chunked down. So idea testing means I look at everything on my list and I say, okay, is that ready for action? Is it an actionable step, or is it a step that requires, what do they call it in colleges? You've got to have a prerequisite, right?
Right, exactly.
That idea needs a prerequisite. So my job for today may not be to develop a marketing plan. Maybe my job is to come up with a few prerequisites for developing a marketing plan. Like maybe asking somebody who specializes in that to help me develop a marketing plan.
Right, right.
Or if I don't even know that somebody, maybe the prerequisite before that is asking somebody if they know anybody who knows how to help me develop a marketing plan.
Exactly.
So that's how you test an idea. You test an idea by looking at it on your structured list and seeing where you are in relation to it and what you need to do. Now I use a game I call red light, green light, where I take every one of those ideas and I put them on a big chart, and is it a red light or a green light? Can I go with it, or do I have to work up to it?
You have a beautiful illustration of the 7 steps with the red light, green light. I don't know if you want to show it now because we haven't finished sharing the last 2 steps. It's up to you, Steve. But first of all, I think there are a lot of people listening who would probably love to speak with you, and we can share your email address. I certainly would also love to speak with you about bringing your stories to life through marketing and through others. So would you like to share your red light, green light now, or do you want to wait till after the last?
Well, let's go all through the 7 steps, and then we'll go there. How's that sound?
That sounds good. I think we all can identify with the idea of red light, green light.
Okay. So that's the essence of it. I mean, so again, we've captured, we've collected, we've cultivated, we've structured, and now we've tested the individual elements of the idea. By the time you've tested the elements of the idea, you should have a timeline that's fairly precise. In other words, now I know everything I need to do to get where I want to go. Now what do I do with it? Well, this is where you have to start scheduling, right? This is where you have to take each of your individual ideas, or each of the individual steps. Because remember, maybe you started out with the five chapters of the book, and now you know that in chapter 1, by going through the testing process, that there are a few pieces of research I need to do first. So now I could actually create a timeline that starts with write chapter 1, do the research for this thing, do the research for that thing, then I could write chapter 2, then I have to call somebody up to help me with this thing, then I could write chapter 3. So there's kind of a timeline. And of course it's a living, breathing entity, it changes, but now you've got some kind of continuity, and now you can actually start the doing part, the action part. And that's where the next step happens, which I call idea scheduling.
Okay, idea scheduling.
This is where you chunk things down to manageable pieces, and where do they go? They go in your day planner. So that's another tool you need. Either you need a day planner. I used to use those Day at a Glance books, which are wonderful. Yes. Now I do it all on the computer. I have Infusionsoft, so I could put everything on my Infusionsoft calendar. And I don't recommend, by the way, I don't recommend that you just use a paper calendar. Why? Because a paper calendar every day is about that big.
Limits you.
You know, it's just not big enough to really flesh out what am I going to be doing at 1 p.m. from 1 to 2. And I'm a big advocate of block booking. You know, we could probably do anything pretty successfully for about an hour at a time tops. After that, we get bored, we get distracted. But if you could focus for an hour on one thing, not multitask. Multitasking is death to this.
Right.
So focusing on one thing. So block booking means you find a vehicle like a day planner or your computer, and you put down a block of time. So not only are you putting when you're going to start this thing, but you're going to put when you're going to end. So you start building these blocks into your day. Now again, some of us have never done that. Some of us don't like the idea of having to have a structure in our lives. We like to be free. And what I say to that is, if that's the way you've been living your life, chances are you're not really experiencing true freedom. Because when you don't have any structure, then you're in bondage. You're in the bondage of procrastination. You're in the bondage of fear. You're in the bondage of emotions that don't exist when you have a strategy. When you have a strategy, you actually can create freedom in your life. And if you decide that, I'm not very productive from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., don't use that block. Use another block. So it's not like you have to, work 9 to 5 based on somebody else's schedule, but you do need to create some kind of structured approach to your life, even if it's just 2 hours a day, 1 hour a day. Make sure that you have the period of time during which you're truly accountable to yourself.
That is so important, Steve. I'm so glad you said that, because as entrepreneurs, our time can be very fluid. It's not like reporting into a job at 9 o'clock, you punch in and then you leave at 5. But what you're saying is we're honoring ourselves by giving ourselves block time where we don't pick up the phone, we don't get distracted, and we just focus. Now, I see that Roland has highlighted a comment. Roland, would you read that for me?
And plus, it'll help if you white box the.
I am white boxing you right now. The top of my screen gets blocked out every time I do that. I don't know why.
Nancy Stubbs was commenting on your earlier stage, saying she likes it more playful than the mind map, more playful and flowing than the mind map. Let it come through you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Nancy, I agree. The reason I like it also is because even mind mapping, although it's a brilliant approach, it does require you to implement a certain amount of structure. You've got to be thinking, well, this goes to that. And sometimes when I'm doing my version, I don't know where something goes. It just plops down in the middle somewhere, and eventually I might draw an arrow. So I agree. I think it's really useful to keep it very right brain, very unstructured at that point. And by the way, I just thought of something that's sort of related, but it's a tidbit. And if you don't mind, could I just take a moment?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
When I wrote Unhypnosis, I wrote it very quickly. And the reason I wrote it very quickly was because of a piece of advice I was given by a friend who had, in fact, I don't know how she heard about this, but what she said was she had heard that when you write a book, an article, whatever you're writing, don't go back and read what you're writing until you're done writing it.
True.
Plow forward. Keep going forward. I did that with my book. It manifested very quickly, and the reason is because our natural tendency, and I still do this all the time when I'm not trying to be very productive, I'll write something and then I'll go back and I'll reread it and I'll change a couple words here and there and I'll kind of roll it around my tongue, and that's one way to write. But that's why some people take years to write their book. If you do it and don't think about what you're writing, you just keep going, what you're doing is very much like doing the colored splashes on the page. You're simply honoring what's coming up, and you're not implementing any left brain. You're not bringing in the inner critic. You're not trying to fix it or criticize it or censor it. You're simply going with the flow. Very important. So in the same way as this is useful for cultivating ideas, it's also useful for writing a book.
Thank you. Thank you. See, I have also been aware of that, too. There's even books about that. One's called Writing Down the Bones.
Yeah.
Named Natalie, I forgot her last name, but it's all about staying in that creative flow, which is what you're talking about, and not letting the judgment part of our brain come in and make us stop. We're getting close to the end. I'd like you to reveal the 7th step, and then we have some surprises for everyone at the end. So we finished idea scheduling. What's that 7th step that we all need to know?
Should I tell you?
Should you tell? Come on! We're all on the edge of our seats here.
Okay. The last step is idea implementation.
Aha.
Actually doing it. Often the hardest one, right?
Yes.
I like to take the approach, if I'm using a day planner, some kind of a physical device like a day planner, is that when it's 2 o'clock on Tuesday at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, and it says do X, Y, and Z, I do X, Y, and Z at that time. And now there are times when I've got to reschedule it or whatnot, but quite frankly, if I've got to change that more than once, then something's wrong. Because by going through the testing process, presumably I've put something on my calendar that is possible, that I'm likely to do. So if I'm procrastinating, if I'm setting it aside or postponing it, there's a reason for that, and I've got to go back to the drawing board. But if I've scheduled properly and all the steps that I've put in my calendar are within my power to do, then when Tuesday at 2 o'clock comes along, I've got to do that, which brings me to a very fundamental point. And I think this is a good time for me to bring up the graphic, okay?
Sure, please.
So let me
One thing I wanted to add to this, Steve, about implementation, I think it's really important for everyone to realize that whatever we say out loud is a matter of keeping our integrity to ourselves.
Yeah.
I know my husband always says that people say they're going to do something and then they don't follow through, and the question is, are we going to be true to ourselves? So that's what this is about. Let me highlight your graphic here. Go ahead.
So what you just said is absolutely true. You know, we're a lot more likely to be accountable to others than we are to ourselves, and that's why it's so important to have a system. So what you're looking at here is a cartoon kind of version of the whole thing, and if you see from the top, you have idea capture, and then idea collection, and then idea cultivation, and then idea structuring, and then you've got the red light, green light, which is idea testing, and then you've got the day planner, which is the idea scheduling, and then the last thing is idea implementation. And the reason I have it listed showing like the green arrow, the green check mark and the D and the X, is because when you come to a point in your schedule and you do the thing, you should check it off. Meaning victory. I did it. I've accomplished what I set out to accomplish. If it's something you're to delegate to somebody else, put a D next to it and make sure you do that. And if you didn't do it, you put an X saying I didn't do it, but then you reschedule it for another time. Now, if you have to reschedule it again more than once, that's where you go right back to the red light, green light, and figure out what's going wrong. Why are you resisting that step? So that's the 7 steps, and if for anybody who's interested, we can make this chart available to you as a gift. The other thing I wanted to point out on this chart is, can you see my mouse when my mouse moves?
I don't. Do you see the mouse moving there? Yeah, I see it.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so here's this little thing on the right side, this cute little Dilbert cartoon where you got the boss up here and Dilbert down below with the arrow, is to represent that as you go down this list of 7 steps, the first 6 steps, or first 5 steps maybe, are what you would call, well, here, let me back up a moment. If I were to ask you as an entrepreneur, Lynn, to complete this sentence, the sentence is this: I'm so grateful that I'm an entrepreneur because I'm my own
boss.
Yeah, I'm my own boss. And if you ask any entrepreneurs on the call, they would say the same thing. I'm my own boss. What they fail to say, and they forget to remember, is you're also your own employee.
Ah, right.
Yeah, and that's a problem we all have because you're so used to being your own boss that you end up being a crappy employee.
Mm.
Being a good employee means following through on what your boss told you to do. That's the accountability piece. So the boss is the person who says, oh, I just had a great idea, let me write it down, let me cultivate it, let me put it on the calendar. But then the employee is the one who picks up the calendar on Tuesday and says, oh, look what my boss wants me to do. And that's where you have to remember, I'm my own employee, and I've got to be honorable as an employee. Otherwise, I get fired.
Right.
So that's why scheduling an idea and then implementing it are functions of the employee and therefore are not up for question. That's where you have to do it with integrity. You've got to do it with responsibility, with accountability. And that's the concept of the 7-step chart.
Thank you, Steve. We're going to have to conclude. We have so much to say, and we're almost out of time, like 1 minute left. So, Steve, if you want to take off the screen share so we can see your face.
Yes,
and I know we have comments here. I want to let everyone know that Steve has agreed to stay for 10 minutes or 15 in our green room after the program, so you'll have a chance to talk with him and meet him personally. He also has a gift to give everyone, and Roland has a surprise to tell everyone at the end. So let's go quickly now to your gift, Steve, and Roland is kind enough to post the link.
Yeah, Lynn is going to put up a link, and what I'm going to introduce you guys to is I'd love to have you guys come to my website and go to my mailing list. I've just put up an opportunity to take a free quiz we call the Mindfulness Assessment. The Mindfulness Assessment is a 10-question assessment that you're going to take that gives you a score. The score gives you a an understanding, you get a whole report on this, an understanding of where you are in terms of your level of mindfulness. Mindfulness being self-awareness, self-acceptance. How self-aware are you? How much are you accepting yourself? When you take that quiz, you're going to learn a lot about yourself and about some of the steps you need to take. Now, when you take that quiz, the other thing that's going to happen, make sure you fill out your name and email at the beginning and end of the quiz. You're going to get the first 40 pages of Unhypnosis for free as a digital download.
That is very wonderful. Thank you, Steve. It's a great book.
Thanks.
I have to attest to it. I read it myself more than once, and I would definitely even consider reading it again. It's so good. And so everyone take note of that. Roland, I don't know if you have the link for me that we can put out, the shortened link, so everyone can get have a chance to take the quiz and get 40 pages of Steve's best-selling book on hypnosis. And I see that we have a comment also that Roland wanted to share before we go to Roland's surprise for the day. Roland, would you read that for us?
Yeah, Shiwa Slater says, steps 1 through 4 are easy for me. I do them a lot. But from then on, thanks for making it clear for me what I would do well to integrate it into my MO. So she thanks you for a few clues there.
Oh,
And
that's
then
good.
also, Nancy Stubbs says, I believe structuring to do nothing can be very productive. I like that comment.
Yeah, Nancy, that's true. Sometimes, and meditation or just walking in the woods or just shutting your brain down for a little while is equally important. So that's why mindfulness is so important. And for the first comment, the idea that any step along the way might be the step that is your particular mental block, and it can be overcome by using some of the subconscious tools that we teach and that we teach you how to implement.
In fact, what I think we'll do, Steve, is after this program is over, we'll put in the comment stream the link to Steve's Procrastination Annihilation course, which is a digital course that you can take on your own, at your own time, and you'll learn a lot more. It's really an excellent course. Roland, I'm going to ask you if you would share a little surprise that's coming up on your program that I think people might enjoy knowing about.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. We're already a little bit over time,
I know,
so
I'm sorry.
but I don't want to miss something that we have not done and we should have done sometime during this hangout. So I want to get back to that. But we're going to have you featured on the Saturday Morning Marketing Smarties show tomorrow, and as opposed to talking about the actual session that you're going to produce of the week following in the summit, a week from today, we're going to take you off the course of what you're teaching, and we're going to analyze you. We get to interview you.
Yes, and so Steve, if you want to join in, or anyone listening, Roland had asked me about doing this, and I thought, well, I don't know, but I really love this whole topic of law of strategic attraction, which is what we're all involved in right now, just being attracted here. And Roland loves the topic, as an expert on it, so we're going to have a more in-depth conversation that will lead to our last summit on how the law of attraction works. So I want to just say, before we're running late, Steve, do you have one last word of advice or any closing statements you'd like to give to our audience before the green room? Oh, and Roland has a last word too.
Interjection.
Right. Okay, go ahead, Roland.
Steve is well known for his presentations, and one of the things that he does is magic. And since it was mentioned a couple times, I was not going to let this show end without him doing a little bit of magic.
Okay, I'll share something really quick. I know we're running late, so I'm just going to do something cool with this scarf, okay? And this is a demonstration of a principle we call the principle of misdirection, which means getting you to look somewhere else. A lot harder when you're looking at a screen, but if I take that scarf and I put it in my left hand, if I wave the other hand around, your eyes will follow the other hand, which means you'll never see the scarf leave, which is very, very strange, you see.
I love this.
Now it's still there. It's just the illusion of invisibility. Because if you want to see it again, you just warm it up like that, and you pull it right back out again to its original size.
Oh, very well done.
The magic of misdirection. So, yeah, I like to end all of my talks by saying that you never know how much power you actually have once you remove interference. Little shifts in attitude, little shifts in belief can make a profound difference. This is all about leverage. So, as Goethe said, whatever you can do or think you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. Be sure to tune in next week, Friday, same time, same station, for our last week of the summit on strategic attraction and attracting your perfect customers. And also, if you can, tune in tomorrow to Roland's show, the Saturday Morning Marketing Smarties. It's at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. And I'll look forward to seeing you there. And in the meanwhile, keep up the great work. Keep on making a difference. We believe in you. Take care. And please join us in the green room if you can. Bye-bye.